I would like to welcome Jyoti Sarda to the Amani Experience podcast. Welcome.
Welcome to you too. Thanks for having me.
We are excited to have you. You're very welcome. We're excited to chat with you. We always do a geographical check-in when we start the interview. So tell everyone where you are right now.
I am in Los Angeles.
All right. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Florida a little bit and a little bit in Colorado.
Okay,
But most of
Florida.
my time in this Southern California area.
Okay, nice. So Florida, I used to live in Miami, Florida. What part of Florida did you kind of
I
start
used to
from?
live in Coral Springs.
All right. So yeah, Southern
That's,
Florida. Okay.
2 hours, I think, away.
Awesome. The first question I want to ask you is when you think of Bushra Amawali, hope I'm pronouncing that right,
Amimwala, yes.
Amiwala, what comes to mind?
Articulate, passionate, President 2028. I don't know.
Okay. Wonderful.
Amazing.
There's a reason why I asked that question. We'll get to that a little later, but I just want to start off with that as well. If you were going to summarize yourself in 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize yourself?
I would summarize myself as a longtime advertising and marketing executive that has pivoted into making content to advocate for the change that I want to see in the world.
And why did you decide to have the courage to make such a dramatic pivot?
Wow, you're jumping right into the tough questions at the beginning.
That's right. We got to get to it because it will help the story.
I feel like a lot of times people don't know the big change that they're making. They just take a small step and then they realize that they've made a pretty big change. And that was the case for me. I was working at a studio. The thing I will say is I was at a point in my life where I didn't have, my child wasn't depending on me to be there day to day. She was a little older. I had savings. I also decided to really take a look around. I had a husband who had a good job. And those are things I did not think of before. I was so used to being a single mother for most of my life that I did not think I had the ability to take risks. And it was at a moment of introspection that I realized I had the capacity to actually take a risk. And if it didn't work out, I would be able to resume some portion of my life. I was established in my career. I could probably get back to it. So that was one reason why I decided to step off.
Interesting. Speaking of risk taking, what is your definition of courage?
Oh, there's so many, but I think it's doing what's right, sort of despite the odds. There are a lot of times when it's easy to do what's right, but there are many times when it's hard and it's unpopular.
Interesting. I view you as just a highly creative professional. In your opinion, what's important for a creative professional such as yourself or myself to succeed in today's business environment?
I think flexibility has got to be somewhere near the top because the business environment is changing so rapidly that if you have a notion of who you are and what your creative product is, and then the technology changes, I think you just have to be that person that can evolve with the changing marketplace. So that's one aspect.
Yeah.
The name of my company is Nimble Media, and actually the theory being that media is so fast moving that you really do need to be nimble to kind of navigate those waters.
You mentioned nimble, you mentioned flexibility. Why do you feel that many people struggle with being flexible and nimble in the current times that we're in?
I think there's a wide range of reasons. For one thing, it's scary to keep changing. Not everyone has learned that capacity and feels confident in that. It is safer to kind of grip on to that you know, the ground underneath your feet. And also, it's hard to know which way to navigate, right? I mean, change happens and it comes on from all sides. You know, one day you are thinking it's okay to be speaking in a certain way. The next day, those words are no longer available to you, and you don't understand why. And it takes a minute to kind of regroup and understand what has happened. That's just
Yeah.
one example.
Yeah, great
But
example.
there are many of those.
How did you get through the fear of change and being flexible? Because you mentioned that previously, and so I'm really curious. We want to learn, how can we best get through fear? What tips or advice do you have for us who are struggling with that?
Um, I have a I I have spent a lot of my life staying within a lane and then venturing out a little bit and then coming back into the lane, right? So I understand the fear of really, you know, stepping out. But I think there comes a point, and part of that is just living your life and sort of understanding that, oh, I already did this and I already know what that outcome was. I did this too. You know, once you've lived, let's say, a couple of decades at least, then you understand that you don't have that much more time left. And I'm still a young woman, but
Yes,
you know,
yes, you are.
you get
Yes.
a little bit of a few years under your belt, and you understand how you can navigate that risk acceptably. Let me give you an example.
Go ahead, please.
I took up skiing with my husband. It's a sport I took up later in life. It's not something I'm ever comfortable with, to be honest. However, to be good to really, you know, master it well, you need to actually lean downhill, right? Which is kind of antithetical to what you want to do. You want to sort of hug the ground. And so what you learn is sort of to trust your equipment, to trust your body, to trust yourself, to look forward, and that you will get there. And that there's plenty of time, if something goes awry, to kind of swerve and kind of get to safer ground. But it took me a long time and a lot of coaching to learn that. I feel like that is, and I'm just discovering it as I'm talking to you, I feel like that's a very good application for risk in other areas.
That's a great example, a great application. And you saw about that on the fly too.
I
Impressive.
did. Why? Because I just took a mountain biking class and it was the same analogy. And
Oh,
I never wanted a mountain bike, but the right teacher made me realize that I could manage the risks that are inherent in going downhill and then back uphill.
great analogy. I'm gonna have to replay that one. That was real good. Thank you for sharing. When you look at your career, you've had a storied career. You've accomplished a lot in a short period of time. If you were to pick the turning point when you realize this is what I'm here to do and I'm all in, what comes to mind?
Oh, that was just maybe this year. I feel like the previous two careers that I've had have been a preparation in many ways. I've really enjoyed being in advertising. I loved being a marketer, but I'm using both of those skills to be an activist. And when I say an activist, I'm really an activist storyteller. I went into making documentaries and into the various storytelling projects that I'm now involved with the idea of, you know, making a statement on the world, hoping to change a few minds, at least illuminate a few subjects. And I feel like I'm coming into my own right now, even though we're in the middle of a lot of chaos.
That indeed, yes, for sure, chaos. When did you have the first inkling that being an activist storyteller was what you were here to do?
You know, I'd like to say it's something I knew when I was a child, but that's not really the way it worked out. You know, you grow up as an immigrant's daughter, and, you know, the idea is to create safety, to make money, to establish yourself in the world. So it was really only, first of all, the world is changing so rapidly. It feels like more is required of us as citizens to kind of pull it back into place. And so I felt like it was no longer acceptable to sit on the sidelines. But also it was the people I met. I would say in the last decade, I have become much more confident in speaking my mind and to sort of addressing the things that sort of, let's call it social injustices. But it's not that I didn't have those feelings growing up in all my previous work. It's just that I didn't act on them. I felt like my way of expressing that was by succeeding in the job that I had, or to kind of, just being successful, that was sort of its best revenge, that type of thing.
Okay. Interesting. A good kind of parallel question is, why do you love what you do?
Wow. So what is it that I do is the question.
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out, but you can tell us now. Go on.
I love the idea of spotlighting an issue in a way that other people can connect with it. So that doesn't mean necessarily always being educational in tone or pedantic. It's really about sort of looking at so I ended up doing a documentary about politics most recently with two partners who were experienced documentary filmmakers. So we actually ended up with a really great 2-part series, as much to do with the topic that we covered, which was very much of its time, following women of color running for office, as well as I think the quality, because of the team that we had assembled. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's made its own small difference, and it's given me the confidence to look at other topics that interest me and to pursue them. Part of it is success begets success, or confidence begets confidence. So the fact that I had an idea, I found people who could help me achieve it, and then it ended up being on point, made me feel very, very good about my ability to sort of intuitively grasp trends that needed, or ideas that needed to be elevated.
Okay. Tell everyone really quickly kind of where they can find your current project and the kind of a brief summary about it, because you spoke about it briefly there.
Yeah. So the title of the series, it's a documentary series called "And She Could Be Next." We follow 6 women of color running for office, including Bushra Amiwala, and also Stacey Abrams, who is currently very much in the news. And it can be found, it aired on POV, or PBS, I should say, and it can be found, the different ways to watch it can be found at andshecouldbenext.com. We're going to have a rebroadcast on December 10th and December 17th. And awesome. After that, there's going to be this free streaming window, so you can catch it on that site.
Perfect. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Thank you for sharing. Of course. You mentioned Stacey Abrams. So when you think of Stacey Abrams, what comes to mind?
Oh my God. She is brilliant, single-minded. She's also a nerd. I know that
we love nerds.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Me too. She's a Star Trek geek. She is disciplined, and just a highly strategic. I'm really a fan of hers in many ways.
You and me both. You also spoke about issues and how you love to tackle issues through storytelling. What is the next issue that you're looking at that you feel you're going to be the most passionate about attacking in the future?
Well, the next project that I'm working on is actually a feature about the life of fair pay icon Lilly Ledbetter. And so the first act of legislation that President Obama signed when he came into office was actually the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. And, over the years, the act has been sort of weakened, stripped away. Mm-hmm. And I feel as though, as we round the corner into this new administration, women, and especially women of color, need to be at the center of this economic recovery. There's I could go on a bit, but they've really suffered with the effects of the pandemic in many ways the most. And there's a lot of single mothers out there who've really taken a hit. And I feel like this film, even though it's about a woman fighting for equal pay a long time ago, will have resonance. And then we can use that as a platform to talk about all issues impacting women in the workplace next year and the year beyond. It just feels like that might end up being the topic next year. We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Interesting. What is something that scares you?
Wasting my time, wasting your time, wasting all of our time. I don't know. Like there's so much effort we put into things, right? And you never know at the time that you're doing it whether it's going to turn out to have been worth it. And I always worry about that.
Yeah. How do you get through that though? How do you get through that and keep moving forward?
Sometimes you just don't have a choice because you're on the path, right?
Right.
I mean, I am constantly evaluating what's the best and highest use of my time, and maybe to a fault. Because sometimes you just need to like keep putting one foot in front of the other and see where you're going.
Right. Definitely. I'm curious, the industry that you're in is extremely crowded. There are lots of people that do similar things to what you do. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
Well, I don't know that I have done that or I haven't done that. I kind of don't think about it. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm not really trying to be a storyteller to rise above my fellow storytellers. There's people who've been doing it for a long time and they are gifted and talented and they will receive the accolades for that. I am looking to connect with a certain audience that needs to hear a certain message. And yes, it's helpful to be recognized in order to get that message to them. So that kind of is how I do it. I just focus on what the story is and who needs to hear it. And I try not to worry too much about rising above the industry, I guess.
Okay. Interesting. Good perspective. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
It's such a good question, and not one that I have a ready answer to. I did most recently, when I left Paramount, that's where I worked in 2016, and I left to join a streaming startup. And for me, that was the risk. I wasn't leaving to go start a documentary project. I was leaving towards a job. And then that company didn't get a round of funding. And then what I thought my role in it was no longer relevant. And that was a failure. That was like I picked wrong. And I think my biggest concern was what the people would think at the company I had just left. And once you get further away from that, you realize people aren't really thinking about you. And I ended up finding this project and finding something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And it feels very much like something working on this documentary series for the past few years has definitely felt like something that's right. That I should be doing it and that I feel very grounded in it. But it is atypical for the type of work that I do. I usually don't take risks in terms of getting paid.
Yes, which is wise. You mentioned how you had to get through worrying about what people think. If you were going to give some people advice, specifically people who struggle with that, they're always trying to worry about what people think when they make decisions. What advice would you give them to help them get past that?
I feel like a lot of the advice that people give, I mean, of course, you should just ignore the naysayers and surround yourself with, people who really have your back, who can kind of see the best in you so that you have that circle of confidence, I suppose. There's a lot of great techniques for doing that. But the truth is, we all think about what other people think. We just do. And I suppose you can use it to your benefit in the sense that it can be a motivator. If I mean, as long as it's not debilitating, right?
Correct.
But also focusing in on the mission. So if you're doing something that you're passionate about, there's an imperative that's driving you forward, and that is the thing that can keep you from, worrying too much about other people. Anyway, that's the best advice I can come up with. I'm not sure it's, going to work for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. But good advice. Thank you for sharing. You've gotten much accolades. You've received some really notable awards, very impressive. As a result, you do acquire more critics, or haters as we call them. How do you handle your critics?
I don't have any critics.
Funny, funny, funny. I love it.
No, seriously, I don't have, I'm not, I don't think I'm successful enough to have a serious number of critics that are saying things directly to me. They may be saying things behind my back. I do have sort of critics in the sense of people, I've entered a new industry. So people telling me that, there are things I don't know. But I also feel like I'm somebody who understands I don't know that. I am going to take my lack of knowledge and partner with people who can fill in those gaps, but it isn't going to keep me from moving forward. Part of that just has to do with confidence in yourself. But I'm serious. I haven't seen anyone like post something negatively online. I don't know how I would feel about it. I guess I would have to just block that and try not to look at it. I take serious criticism seriously. If somebody tells me something that I really ought to consider, I would absolutely listen to that.
Good.
I wouldn't let it crush me. I just would listen.
Good. That's good. We can always listen.
Yeah.
I've learned and I found that we learn the most in life through when we fall and hit the ground the hardest. So that's kind of a preface to this question about, tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
I think the three phases that feel like the darkest were, I got divorced. So I'm on my second marriage, and I got divorced when my child was very young. Like she was a baby. So that was a tough time. My father died. That was a strange time. And then my brother died. My younger brother died. And those were three separate instances. I don't know that what helps me is going to help everyone else, and that I have I have the ability to somewhat to compartmentalize, and I sometimes put things in a place, and I kind of work my way out of it. So I kind of just do work, and then at some point I feel better, and then I can kind of go and look at that thing that was very disturbing and kind of unpack it a little bit. And I will say, in a sense, that's sort of what I did in each of these circumstances. I was responsible for somebody or something else. And, the one that was the worst was my brother, just because it was unexpected and he's younger. And it really impacted my mother in so many ways. And I really there was just no way to make that better. My father had been sick, so it wasn't expected, but it wasn't a surprise.
I understand.
I don't know. Those are the thoughts I have. I personally am somebody who just, like, if there's something horrible happening in the world, I might be cleaning my kitchen, and just to kind of like work my way through it, to do something I can control.
Yes.
That's what I tend to do. And then I tend to go and look at the feelings later, and try to like deal with them.
So my one follow-up question would be, first of all, thank you for sharing. I know that's very personal.
Yeah.
How many people just get stuck and they just get paralyzed and don't move if they've been through one of the three examples that you gave? How were you able to just taking one step and keep moving forward, and not letting what was horrifying in your personal life stop you and paralyze
Yeah. I I completely appreciate the feeling of being stuck and needing to sometimes take pause and really regroup. I used to get frustrated with people who I felt like were getting in my life, my friends, my whoever. Just and then I realized that some people just need more time
you.
to really heal and kind of recenter themselves. However, you were right. There are times when it becomes more than a coping mechanism. It becomes an excuse not to sort of move forward. I think good friends can help move you along. They can nudge you a little bit in just the right way. Your family can. I just happen to be one of those people. Like, the thing that makes me feel the best is to do things, right? So I always have sort of kept my eye on what I perceive to be coming next, maybe to a fault. Um, but I try to help other people in that way of like kind of looking up a little bit, because there's got to be a balance between being in the moment and also looking forward, right?
Yes.
You know what advice I'd give to people is just pick something small.
Mhm.
Yeah, just do something small. That's the best thing to do. Do something that you can complete, and then do the next thing that you can complete. And pretty soon you are doing many things. But maybe it's the contemplating of something big that keeps everybody just stuck.
There you go. Wow. Okay. Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Oh, my mom. In good ways and bad ways.
Okay, talk to us.
Well, my mom was, so you have to realize that my dad immigrated, to America. He got the scholarship to Stanford, super smart. And my mom married him and left her home, traveled halfway around the world. She did not get to see her family quite in the same way again. That's an amazing risk. And she kind of carved this new life for herself. She has multiple degrees. She's very accomplished, very stubborn, very smart. And so she was kind of a model of a woman in transition, because she was also a traditional Indian wife. But she was also a working mother. And so I always had that growing up. And I was the eldest, so I was sort of like in the son role. And then my mom is also can get stuck and can and be stubborn to a fault. And so I have learned by not doing those things. So those are but she's been a huge influence on my life.
What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
I don't know that everyone has a hard time looking down the road, but I have always looked a little further out. I have always observed the tea leaves of an industry and tried to understand my place in it, and have been thinking about whether I should stay or I should go or I should pivot, and I'm not sure that everybody does that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like to stay in the position they're in and feel the security and the comfort. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the world keeps changing. So I think I'm pretty good at looking ahead.
That's a good skill. That's a very, very good skill. Very rare. What would you like to be better at?
Oh my God, everything. I would like to be. My tagline used to be work in progress. And then I thought, that's like, I need to be a little bit more confident than that. I would like to be better at, skiing. I would like to be better at having a balance. I do tend to get pretty engaged in the work projects that I have. And even though I make my own schedule, I don't know if you're like this, I tend to ride myself harder than a corporation would have. So
Yeah.
I probably, one of the things seriously I want to do this weekend is rethink my calendar to really block out time for things that are not work.
Okay. Okay. When you were 21, were you still at USC or had you already graduated and moved on?
Oh, let me think about that. When did I graduate? So I was no, I hadn't graduated yet, but I would the next year.
Okay, so you're at USC. We're going to talk to 21-year-old Jyoti.
Yeah.
And we're going to meet you in a coffee shop. And what advice would you give your younger self, your 21-year-old self, based on what you know now?
I did this actually at a conference once. I offered to give, like we all came up with advice we would give our 21-year-old self.
Yes. I love this question, by the way.
I do too. So one of the things I would do is tell myself to take more risks. No need to wait till you're, twice that age to do that. And I would have told myself to, yes, go ahead and work hard, but to make sure people knew what I was doing. So one of the things that happens in big corporations is the guy or woman at the top doesn't always know what every single person who works for them is doing. It is your job to make sure in whatever way that you can that work that you're doing, the accomplishments that you are, accomplishing, the benefits that you're providing the company are known, not by bragging. And, people think, a lot of times women think that it's bragging, but really it's just public service. It's letting people know what is happening. And I was terrible at that. I would just work and expect maybe my boss or somebody else to notice. And that's just not the way it works. So definitely one, I used to manage intern programs, and I would tell the interns, okay, you're here and you are going to assist us, but let's make sure there's at least one bullet point on your resume that you can walk out of here with after 3 months, and make sure your job is to do these things that I've laid out here on this piece of paper, but also your job is to go around and meet people and find out what they do, and to make sure they know that you're here so that you have somebody to come back and talk to when you're actually looking for a job. So and that's advice I would give to my younger self, right?
Amazing. Yeah, great advice. Thank you. What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
This one, I've just started to become really good at letting people know what I do, and to be active in seeking out other people. Now, I want to say it's the last few years,
Right.
but I used to be really centered on my work.
Okay.
And I didn't often take the blinders off. So I feel like the reason I feel so much more comfortable and confident is because I am following this excellent advice myself.
Love it. Love it. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence is, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
Finally finding the courage and confidence to take the world on.
Whew, well done. What is one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
Okay. I'm going to say I have developed bad habits during the pandemic.
Yes, you're not alone.
What I'd love to be able to say is I exercised every day.
Yeah.
All I do is I drink coffee every morning. I'm sorry. I don't think I have good habits.
Okay.
Right now, but I'm planning.
You're planning on it. We're all works in progress. We're all works in progress.
Exactly.
Now, we are really big readers here on the Amani Experience podcast. If there was 1, 2, or 3 books you feel we should stop what we're doing right now and start to read them immediately, what books come to mind?
It's funny. I used to be such an avid reader, and one of the things that happens when you're working on a document, I consume news a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of news. But there's a book I read by Stacey Abrams, and it's called Lead from the Outside. Now, yes, it's a political book, but there's advice in there for almost anybody who feels like they're not in the mainstream, because she's really talking about how you lead authentically as, let's call it, a marginalized community. But marginalized is such a funny word. But as somebody who's not an accepted mainstream person, and how you can still build power and affect change, even though you're not recognized as such. And so when I read it, yes, it's a political primer for winning elections and, governing, but it can be if you read it carefully, it can actually be advice for other things.
Good. Have to check that out. Add it to notes. Thank you for that. What are the 5 things that you want to be known for?
Okay. 5 things.
Yes, 5 things.
Well, I want to be known for being a good mom.
Okay.
I want to be known for being a good partner and friend.
Yes.
But beyond that, just someone who made a difference and spoke their mind, was unafraid.
All right. Good. We'll take that. That was 3.5, 4. We'll take that. We'll get one more later. That's good. That's good. What has been the best advice that you have ever received?
Ever? Well, I don't know about ever, because I get a lot of good advice.
Right.
But the advice that I have been trying to follow most recently, and maybe this could be part of my good habits, is this idea of surrounding yourself with, let's call them cheerleaders, but I'm increasingly surrounding myself with people who are really trying to see the best in me. And so they're not criticizing me, and see these possibilities for me that I don't even see for myself. And then I just follow, I try it a little bit, just keep trying something that someone suggested. And I've now actively started to go out and cultivate more people like that into my sort of close-in circle, because during a pandemic, you don't end up actually seeing people in person, but who you spend your time with just talking like this is actually very valuable. So that's something I've been doing, and I would highly recommend, because it literally opens up doorways, possibilities. And I feel like I do that for other people, but I didn't have that for myself.
Why do you feel it's so hard for us to see possibilities for ourselves, and it's easier for other people to see it within us looking on the outside?
I don't know. Maybe that's just human nature. There's some people for which it's the reverse. They don't see anything for other people. They just see it for themselves.
Yes, we know. We know.
But I think we're just our own worst critics. There's probably a lot of, sort of, it's our nature to be a little bit conservative in the sense of you want to be safe. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not sure I have the entire answer to that. I know for myself, I do tend to look outward more than inward. And, part of that is good, but it can also be a detriment when you're not giving yourself permission to kind of explore things that are right there in front of you, but you just didn't give yourself the permission to. So I'm not answering your question, because I'm not really sure why we're all so hard on ourselves, but I know a lot of people do that. They don't see it for themselves, and other people can see how terrific they are.
Amen. Yeah. You are answering the question, because you're giving us your thoughts. So you're answering the question. Now, you're a sports fan at all? That would be a no.
Not organized sports. My husband is.
Okay. Let's paint this picture. You're here in LA. You're coming to the Staples Center. You're going to make a speech. You're walking out to center court. As you're about to make a speech, what song is playing as you walk out?
Oh, a song that I can do. Okay, I hope this doesn't sound like a shameless plug, but we a talented composer, Ginger Shankar, made this beautiful soundtrack for our documentary. And on there is a track by Aloe Black called Believe. And I've been listening to it a lot lately, and I find it just gives me joy. So I'm going to say that.
That's a great plug. I love it. And we can find it on like Spotify, YouTube, everywhere, correct? All right. We're going to put that in there then. Awesome. So before I ask you the final question, tell people how they can find you online, where you're located, where's the best place to reach you, social media, where do you live?
I live in a lot of places. I definitely live on LinkedIn, Jyoti, JYOTIMSARDA. So that is the way you spell my name. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook by the same handle, and also on Twitter by the same handle. Instagram, I'm Jyoti Pi.
Got it. Awesome. We always let our guests take us home with any last minute words of wisdom or advice. So I'll say first, thank you very much for taking time in a busy holiday time to speak with us and chat with us and give us some wonderful advice. We really appreciate just your wisdom, what you've done for the community as a storytelling activist storyteller. I love that kind of title or genre which you're in. So we want to continue to support you. Any last minute words of wisdom or advice as we kind of take us home?
Well, I guess it's on this theme of don't think too hard about it. Just take that first step. Then just take the next step and see how it goes. It might go a lot better than you think.
Awesome. Okay, hold on 1 minute.